If you spend any amount of time in the great outdoors, hunting or fishing, you need to watch Southern Woods and Waters on News Channel 5 Plus. Join host Hugh McNaughton and our area's top sportsmen as they share their experience and knowledge. Southern Woods and Waters is all about Middle Tennessee, and it's live. Call in with your questions. Whatever the season, that's what they're talking about. Tune in to Southern Woods and Waters Thursday night at 8, or catch the encore presentation Sunday night at 8 on News Channel 5 Plus.
We are back. Final segment with our guest, Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney, taking your calls. We've had some good ones this morning, 737-7587. Let's go next to Chris, who waited through the break. Hi, Chris.
Yes.
Good morning, Chris. How can we help you?
Good morning. My question is, this happened like 2 years ago in Washington State, so I don't know if the laws are the same. But my husband went in to see the doctor, and he was told he had a sty, on his eye. The doctor removed it, but never sent it to pathology. And within a month, we found out he had stage 4 Merkel cell carcinoma. Is it
meaning that
protocol to test anything that you remove from the body apart?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. My first thing to tell Chris is you should contact a Washington State lawyer who does medical malpractice cases to look at that. That is definitely a case that's worth investigating. But
could you revisit that outside the 2-year statute? Because she said it happened.
Yeah, I don't know.
Some cases, rare cases, you can go back the statute.
I don't want to give Chris...
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't know what Washington State says.
Correct.
That's right.
It's
different state to state, Chris.
The wrong advice.
Well, I had talked to one attorney. It wasn't a medical malpractice, but they said because it's a rare, fast-growing cancer, there wouldn't be a case. But I'm just...
I would think that's the reason there would be.
If you were to remove something from the body, you would send it to a lab.
I would want a formal review by a medical malpractice lawyer in Washington State.
Yeah, because here's my point. I mean, yeah, I don't see that argument. If it's an aggressive, fast-moving cancer, that's all the more reason that lost month or two that your husband had, allowed it to grow. Correct?
Yeah, it spread to the lymph nodes and everything.
How is he doing now?
Well, we moved down here because they were going to put him on hospice. So we moved to Nashville for treatment, and now he's going through trials.
Okay. Wow.
In a situation like this, if I had a case like Chris's, what I would do is I would gather the medical records and I would send them to an oncologist, a cancer doctor expert that I have, who reviews my cancer cases, and let him look at it and tell me whether or not the cancer could have been treated in a way to prevent metastasis. And
after the removal of that
correct, because if you think about it, metastasis is really nothing more than the cancer getting out and planting seeds in the ground and other parts of the body, and those seeds germinating in different places. If you can stop that from happening, you can prevent a lot of bad consequences of cancer. That's why timing is of the essence in dealing with cancer. But that would be a question for my oncology expert to review if this were a Tennessee case. But Chris needs to have a Washington State malpractice lawyer review this case and give her an opinion.
It may be worth doing, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your call. I'm just curious, the one point she made, and you go in with a sty, which if it's just a basic sty, it can be a clogged pore, whatever it is, that's not a medical emergency. The doctor takes it off. Is it standard procedure if you remove something, be it a mole, a sty, that you would automatically send it to have a biopsy on it or to have it tested? Or if the doctor looks at it and just, I've gone to dermatologists where they lop stuff off and they almost always send it to the lab just to find out if it's cancerous, I guess. On the eye, maybe he decided, oh, it's just a sty. All right, let's just dispose of it. Biohazard. What's the standard procedure? Standard of care is what my question is.
I don't know, Nick. That's why she needs to have it reviewed, because that's a case I haven't dealt with before. But that's why I would want my oncology expert to look at this and answer that very question. That's what we as malpractice lawyers do. We have experts from the medical profession, all different kinds of specialists. That's what I do is have relationships with these folks, and I'll send these records to one of these specialists and say, answer this question for me. And if the doctor says, look, this is what was supposed to be done, the standard of care was violated, and this person's been injured as a result, that's where I come in and I file the lawsuit and I take the patient's case to either get a settlement or a trial verdict. But that's the importance. the key to being board certified like I am is I've got access to these experts where most lawyers don't.
Yep, and that's the key to everything. And understanding, you've learned a ton, I know, but understanding the way a doctor does is not the same. And standard of care, just to remind folks, it's just not some phrase we throw out there. That, to me, is at the heart of every single medical malpractice case. Can you explain that? Meaning standard of care, in her case, was it followed with her husband?
Yeah, they're the rules.
That's the rules. That's the rules, meaning you determine you have a case if the standard of care wasn't followed. Meaning,
correct.
All right, all these other doctors do it this way, and you didn't. And this guy has cancer now because of you. Because had you followed standard of care, you might have caught it. Is that the point?
Exactly. I mean, we all have rules in our profession. You have rules as a journalist. I have rules as a lawyer. We all have rules. Doctors have rules they have to follow under certain circumstances. And when they violate those rules or they don't live up to certain standards and a patient's harmed, that's when they can be called to account for that violation in court.
The standard of care evolves with technology?
Yes.
Okay, and in one case we keep going back to another one that you see more, again, the clotting issue. I know since you've last been on, I read somewhere another case where an individual went in for a relatively minor surgery and died because a clot went to their heart or brain.
Right.
And I'm like, wait a second, it had nothing to do with clots or anything. They were having knee surgery or something and died. And again, just that's something people need to be aware of. There's a new standard to prevent that.
There is, and it's what medical studies have shown, particularly in the last 10 or 15 years, is that preventative measures such as putting those devices, sequential compression devices on your legs, those pressure wraps on your legs, or having what's heparin, which is an anticoagulant that's injected in the body, those prevent blood clots. The problem is, and I put this off on the hospitals have been very slow in developing protocols to enact these preventative measures so that they're followed and implemented to prevent blood clots. I mean, there's a reason, Nick, malpractice is the #3 leading cause of death in America. Now, it's not all because of blood clots, but there's a reason for this, and part of the reason is there are certain preventative measures that simply are not followed or implemented to try to prevent some things that are fairly easy and straightforward to prevent.
You mentioning hospitals there too makes me want to hit on this, and I get asked it a lot of the time. There are a lot of people that have conditions that need to be treated and may have to go to the hospital, and they are simply afraid to go to the hospital. Not because of their condition, but because they probably watched you and I talking about this. Hospitals, by definition, are sick places. You've said some clearly better than others, but you would argue, do everything you can to avoid going to a hospital.
Look, I'm scared to go to the hospital.
Listen, from him.
I mean, and you know, in my judgment, for good cause. So, I mean, there are times when you do have to go, and when you have to go, you have to go.
But what scares you?
Infection, mistakes, protocols that aren't followed. The thing is, if people know me, they're probably going to go out of their way to follow the rules because they know what I do. All right, but it shouldn't be that way. They should follow the rules for everybody. But I know how assembly line medicine is practiced in hospitals, and it disturbs me. Okay. And until that's changed, and I don't know if it will be, we're going to have a system where people are just going to continue to get injured or get killed. And that's why we have this compensation system set up. It's kind of like workers' comp. There's going to be a certain amount of people who are going to wind up being injured or killed, getting medical care, and those people have to have access to the courts to be able to pick up the pieces.
Right. And you know there has to be a lot. I don't know when the last time is you've had to go to a hospital for anything, either to visit a friend or maybe on the job. I have. I have never been to any of these hospitals, including the emergency rooms, where it is not packed to the gills. It's so crowded they have to triage and have some people on their gurneys in hallways.
Well, you see,
I mean, and I'm talking about some very big name, established, good hospitals right here in Metro, which are good, but they're so crowded.
Do you see now why they're teeming with bugs? There's bugs everywhere. There's sick people there, but there's lots of sick people there.
Like MRSA.
All kinds of bugs that people can, you know, diseases and infections that people can contract trying to get healed in there, which is why it's beneficial, I think, to stay out of there as much as humanly possible. And yes, there are some hospitals that are worse than others when it comes to that.
There are benefits to my job. One of them is knowing this guy. I go in for a colonoscopy and I've got a big sticker here say, my lawyer's Clint Kell. No, I'm just saying, I mean, you just, you know, to know. I mean, I am dead serious. I would give you a call if I had a procedure and I knew where I was going to ask you what you thought of, be it that doctor, if you knew anything, or whether or not.
But you also know now what to ask.
Oh, absolutely. And I know what to ask too, or whether the hospital. But I would bounce it off. Yeah, not, and everyone does. You and I are friends, and I know you, and I would trust you to call you. But, you know, the average public, I think you just hit it on the head. You know, I have that benefit, but the truth is I can find out for myself by asking the right questions of the hospital and do some research online.
And there's one other point I want to make, Nick, so people don't get the wrong impression. It is a small, tiny percentage of healthcare providers committing the vast majority of the medical malpractice or negligence. And I want people to understand that. The vast majority of doctors, nurses, providers are good. They do their job. In fact, a lot of them go above and beyond what they're required to do to help people. But there seems to be that small 5% of people committing 80% of the negligent acts.
You know, it was interesting. I was watching some of the after polls from the election last night talking about, and we heard a lot about immigration and illegals coming into the country and national security. Number one on the list still, by a large margin, above all those other issues, health care. It remains there. And that, it just hits home to me just how many people are sick when I visit these hospitals. And you make a good point about doctors. And there's a heck of a lot of people, the majority, that go to hospitals and come out healthy as a result. But, you know, the fact that it's so busy and it's a priority, and there's so many sick people, Clint, or people that need to seek it, it makes you realize you've got to look out for yourself.
Well, think about the hospitals that are closing and continuing to close.
Especially in rural areas?
Because they don't get enough money.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We spend so much time talking about coverage for pre-existing conditions, and we spend no time talking about how do we deliver care that's safer, that's better. How do we create more hospitals? How do we create more doctors? How do we break down this assembly line medicine and provide a system that delivers good care, but safe care? No one ever talks about that. All they want to talk about is pre-existing conditions and Obamacare, and it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And so that's why, in my judgment, malpractice is the third leading cause of death in the United States.
And that is why you need to have attorneys like yourself to hold these hospitals accountable, because that's what then will spawn change. Okay, because, well, they're making these payouts. It's costing us money. There's got to be a better way to do this.
Somebody's got to pick up the pieces, Nick.
Right.
Somebody.
And that's why that remains something important, and it's there for everyone to consider. Clint, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
As always, a pleasure having you on. We'll see you again soon. We'll take a break, and when I come back, by the way, with that one caller and others, we'll make sure to have Clint's contact information up there as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Thanks, Clint.
All right, we'll see you.